Well, greetings, people of the internet. Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, we're going to build a gaming PC, and I mean a high-end gaming PC. So, let's get started right now. Now, why in the world would I need a gaming PC? Well, it's actually not for me. I was approached by my neighbor about a week ago, and actually it's my neighbor's daughter, and he's my mechanic. He lives down at the end of the street. And his daughter reached out to me. I think she's about 16 or 17. And she said, "Hey, I want to build a gaming PC, and you're the guy to build it for me." And I was like, "Well, I tell you what, you come down here and be willing to put in some time. Actually, you can build it, and then I can supervise you and help you along with that process." So that's what we agreed to do. However, I got to thinking about it, and time was not allowing that to happen. She was getting ready to leave on vacation with her family to go to Indiana or Illinois. And I didn't have time to wait for her. So I said, "Why don't you just get..." She said, "Well, I've got it partially assembled." She said, "So let me bring it all to you." So she did. She brought it all to me. The first thing I heard was a screw rattling around inside. And I was like, "Well, okay." So I told her, "I tell you what, you go on vacation. You're going to have to leave it with me while you're on vacation. We're not going to have it ready any sooner. I'll build it. I'll get it all assembled and the software loaded. And tested, and we'll go from there." Now, one of the problems I had is, I hate it when I don't have control of ordering the parts, right? Now, she did a damn good job of speccing the system out. She ordered a really good motherboard. She ordered a high-end CPU, a high-end video card, good RAM, a fast NVMe drive, a Samsung. She decided to go with the water cooling, and it's a good idea she did, because she's going to be mainly using this for gaming and for programming. She is a programmer, a coder. So it took 3 days after she left it here with me to get that cooler in here. In fact, I was able in the meantime to order a thermal take, just an air cooler for that CPU, so I could at least assemble it and test the components, because she'd never even fired the system up. So what you're going to see on the video here is what I do. My normal course of action is I lay the components out on my bench behind me, just plug them in together, make sure they're all working, burn them in, and then I do the assembly of the PC. So let's go over to the bench, and you can see what we ended up doing with this. All right, so I've got all the components laid out here, assembled. I've been testing them for a while, so let's go over what this young lady has decided to use in this system. She brought me the parts. She had partially assembled them into the case and made some boo-boos. And it's a good thing. The first thing I did was disassemble everything, take it out of the case, because I heard a screw rolling around inside, and that can never be a good thing. So she did pick some good quality parts. In fact, she's gone with the Asus ROG Strix Z690A Gaming Wi-Fi D4 motherboard. She went with an Intel CPU, a 12th Gen 12700K, I believe, which is the overclockable CPU. She's gone with this behemoth of a video card, the GeForce RTX 3080. It's a 10 gig card. I love this card. This card, I think she paid close to almost $1,000 just for this video card. She wanted a gaming unit. She wanted one that's going to last her for years, and this will do it. This is a really nice motherboard. And the other thing she went with is Corsair DDR4 RAM, which if you look close, you can see it here, right there. Now, unfortunately, some of the parts, you see it's a nice motherboard. It's got a nice, show you the back plane here. Got a nice back plane. And then she went with a a Corsair modular power supply. So it's a really nice system, I must admit. The other thing she went with is water cooling, and this finally came in the other day. It's the Corsair Elite Capellix water cooling water block and radiator. And then temporarily, just so I could get it up and running, I picked up the cheapest fan I could find on the Amazons, and that was the Thermaltake Gravity i3. And as you will see in some of our test results that we'll talk about later, this CPU cooler cannot keep up with this chip. Anytime I try to run something like I'm running now, the CPU gets up to 100 degrees C. It's not healthy, which means it's going to throttle the speed. So hopefully the water cooling will have a better effect, or we'll have better performance and lower operating temps. And I've got a bunch of tests I'm going to be running on this. So now the next thing to do, now that I've got everything up on the bench and I know it works properly, is to disassemble this thing and start putting the components into the case, getting the radiator mounted, get everything hooked up and wire cable tied and all that, and then we can start doing some more test results. But I just wanted you to see all the components here kind of sitting out on the bench. I've taken, it's not my unit, so I've taken extra care. She's got a couple of $1,000s invested into this thing, so I want to make sure that I don't do anything to it, damage it otherwise. And frankly, this is my first build where I'm going to be using a water cooler and a video card of this type, so it's going to offer me some challenges. But there you go. Let's go ahead. We'll get the build started. I'll just time lapse it on the surveillance camera so you can see what I'm doing, and then we'll talk about it once it's all built. Now the next thing I need to do is get all the components put together in the case, and that's always the hardest part, right? And initially I was going to assemble this thing, and then I was going to leave her to hook up all the LEDs and fans and do the cable management and all that. I thought that would be a good job for her. But as I got into it, I take pride in my work. And as I got into it, I said, I just want to do this. I want to get it over it. I want to see the expression on her face when she gets a properly assembled and tested system. So that's what I'm doing in the second part of this video, is spending a lot of time assembling the system, plugging everything in correctly. Now, initially, she had the case is a Corsair case, and it came with a LED and fan controller. But the Corsair water cooler that she bought also came with its own controller. So I removed the one that came with the case and installed the one from the water cooling kit, and got all the cable. This case is a dream. Even though it's kind of thin metal on it, it's really well made as far as routing cables and wires and whatnot, and a lot of thought, I'm sure, engineering and design went into this case. It was actually the whole thing was a joy to work with. So let's go watch me assemble this thing, and you can critique my skills at the end. right, so we got the unit assembled. I spent probably a good 3.5 hours figuring out how everything was going to fit in here. I was forced to mount the radiator here on the side, because if I mounted the radiator on the top here, it would impinge on this part of the motherboard and these tall RAM sticks, and there was nothing I could do to get around it. So what I've done instead is I've mounted the radiator on the front, and I've got all the fans now to where they're blowing out. So this fan exhaust back here, I have 2 fans up here, and you can see them through the top. This thing came with a bunch of fans, and all these fans are set to exhaust. Now, this is a really, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with Corsair's stuff. This is a very good case. It's kind of thin metal, but it's very well engineered. The metal, like I said, the metal is kind of thin, but I like the case. It's got a lot of room to work. It's got a lot of place to hide cables. Then I was also able to get the RX 3800, I think it is, video card. Yeah, 3080 video card installed. And everything seems to be running okay. I did run some burn-in tests on it. So now the next thing I need to do today is get all the cables in the back organized. The young lady's going to be here at about 2 to pick this up, so I want to make sure I've got everything ready for her. And then once I get all the cables tied up, I'm going to put the covers on, and then I'm going to run some more diagnostics on it to get it nice and warm. Now when this thing is running at full bore, it's pulling about 478 watts. That's a lot of. My rack, give you an idea, my rack only pulls 700 watts with a bunch of PCs and servers running. So this thing is going to be a pig on power. It's a 12th gen Intel Core i7 12700K. I got to tell you, the young lady who picked the parts for this did a good job. And there you can see we've got the information on it. The temperatures when I was using that Thermaltake cooler were up at 100°C. That's not acceptable because the CPU is going to throttle. Now adding the water cooling, I think the highest temperatures you can see we got there was about 82°C. And at idle they're sitting around 22. The unit went to sleep overnight and just woke up here this morning without any problems, so I think we're good on that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tidying up the cables, and then I'll get the covers put on it, and then we'll go from there and see what kind of performance we get with it and what kind of temperatures we experience. But as you can see, it's a nice looking machine, and it's got glass covers on the side and the front, so it'll have a good visual effect. The young lady, I just spoke with her on the phone. She's very excited to be getting this thing today. Of course, she's second guessing all of her purchasing decisions, and I was like, no, you did the right thing, and you'll be happy with it. So anyway, all right, I'm going to cut the video here, and we'll come back when I've got covers on and I'm burning it in, doing some testing. All right, so here we are with the final assembly. I got the covers on, got all the wires done. You saw me putting organizing all the wires on the B-roll footage. Again, I'm very satisfied with this Corsair case. One limitation, no 5 1/4 slots, but if you're not using, internal 5 1/4 optical drives, you're okay. And you can always get an optical drive external. So all the wiring management has been done. The covers are on. I cleaned it up. And now we're running a stress test. And Sakura gave me a recommendation of a program that is called Furmark. And what Furmark does is if I can get this up here, tell you what, let me lift the camera, or not. So Furmark puts a stress test on the graphics card. And then in addition to Furmark, I'm also running Prime 95 to test the CPU. So far our CPU is running around 80 degrees C, Now the max of it was up to is 94. To me, that's a little high, even with liquid cooling. But keep in mind, the radiator is on the front of this unit, not on the top. It just simply wouldn't fit. And the GPU is running at about 72 C. And it's currently pulling about 617 watts running at full bore. Now, I also took some measurements on the decibel measurements, and it's about 60 decibels. And you could probably hear the fans. Let me move my microphone. This is the front of the case. This is the top of the case. And this is the rear of the case. So not too bad, not too bad. Again, very impressed with this Corsair case. I tell you, I'll be buying Corsair products more than I have in the past, just based on this one build. This is kind of a dream build for me. I could never have the kind of money to put together, nor would I, to build one of these machines. I think the young lady told me she's got about $2,000 into this machine so far. I mean, hell, the video card alone is $1,000. It's just way out of my price range. But it was fun putting this thing together. I took my time. Now, originally, I was just going to put it together and make it work for her, and then let her do all the LEDs and the fans and all that, and the cable management. And then I got into it, and I was like, no, I want to finish this off. And I'm glad I did, because I really had a lot of fun doing it. So what's more fun than spending other people's money and building equipment for them? So I pardon the reflections here from the window, but this is a glass front cover on the thing. The motherboard, man, I really like this motherboard too. It's got diagnostic LEDs on it, because when I initially put this thing together, it wouldn't boot once I put everything in the case. It's like, oh man, I got a short somewhere. Well, if you read the diagnostic LEDs, every time it was stopping on the VGA during the post. So I looked around, and sure enough, one of the 200,000 power connectors on this VGA card was just not quite plugged in all the way. So once I plugged that in, we were good to go. Now, I will say though that I'm starting to get a little concerned though, because as you can see, the CPU temps are now around 90 C. And that, I don't know what temperature the CPU starts to throttle. But as you can see, the cores are running at 4.7 gigahertz right now. So evidently it's not throttling yet, but just those CPU temps seem a little bit high for me. But what do I know? I'm just a guy, right? Sakura, what do you think? Is that CPU temp a little high?
It's within reason.
Okay.
I think its max is like 120.
Okay.
It was almost around like 100.
Well, let's see what kind of temperatures we're getting out of the front and the back of this unit. Got my handy dandy tester here. If you don't have one of these, invest in one. Oh man, they're so handy to have around. So let's see, out of the front, we're getting 118 degrees freedom units. Out of the top, we're getting about 103, 105 freedom units. And out of the back, and I have to thank Tom for coining that phrase, freedom units. And out of the back, we're getting about 104, and it's a noticeable amount of heat coming off this thing. So in the winter, it's gonna be nice and toasty under her desk. Now the other problem is her mother keeps her house about 80 degrees in freedom units, which is a little high, but the computer should be fine. They take all that into account when they design these systems. So the big thing you got to worry about on these CPUs is throttling the speed if the temps get too high. So I'm going to let this run for several hours. It's about 10:30 now in the morning on Saturday. She's not due to come pick this up till about 2. We'll just leave it running these tests, monitor the temperatures and see how high they get, and we'll go from there. And keep in mind, when we had the Thermaltake cooler on here, just running Prime 95, the CPU was getting at 100 degrees C. So this is doing better considering we're running Prime 95 and we're running what is it called, Furmark, and no throttling of the CPU. So we'll keep an eye on it. So there you go. It's all assembled, all done, burned in, and you saw the expression on her face when she came to pick the unit up. And I'm glad she chose me to build the system, because I don't have the kind of funds. She's probably spent, I think, over $2,200 on this system. Hell, that video card alone retails for about $1,000, and I think she said she got it for $800. So that high-end CPU, several hundreds of dollars, the motherboard, $300, the case, the water cooling, it all adds up. I have no use case for a gaming PC of this type, so I would never build one of them otherwise. But that's the beauty of working for other people. You get to build things and play with these toys that you necessarily can't afford. So, and it went for a good cause. I mean, she is as smart as a whip. This young lady, I've known her whole life. Known her parents her whole life, and she's smart as a whip. And it went to a good cause. And so I didn't charge her a penny to build this. I wouldn't have felt right if I had. I did ask her permission to use the video on YouTube, and she agreed. But let me tell you, I had a lot of fun building it and watching all those lights light up and playing with the light schemes. I'm not a big fan of the LEDs, but that system, you got to admit, was pretty amazing when I got done with it. And it was fast. My goodness, it's fast. So hopefully she's going to get a lot of use out of this. I know she was very happy when she took it home. I told her, make sure you got to dedicate. The thing, I think toward the end, was pulling 600 to 700 watts at full bore. That's a lot of watts. And then I advised her to get a battery backup unit. And I have a spare one around here, just needs a battery. So she's going to buy a battery. I'm going to order it, put it in, and then have her come pick it up. The only thing I ended up charging her for was a copy of Windows 10 Pro, an OEM copy that we got online. And she ended up going with the Windows 11 Pro. She was going to go with the Windows 11 Home. I told her, nah, don't do Home, do Pro. You'll be much happier. So there you go, folks. Done, and done. She's a very happy camper. I got to put my hands on some higher-end equipment, a video card I'll probably never see again in my lifetime. That is a behemoth. That video card must have weighed 3 pounds on its own. There was some concern when I mounted it into the PC, because it's going to be horizontal and not vertical, that it might weigh too much. But it's got a steel backplate on it, and which helps stiffen the card. And I didn't have any trouble with sag or anything when I put it into the case. And yeah, I'll build another one of those again. That was actually a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And along those lines, we hope you enjoyed this video. So if you found it entertaining and informative, please give us a thumbs up down below. Leave your comments in the comments section. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and click that little notification bell to be notified of new videos when they come out. Donate if you're so inclined. PayPal, Patreon, the YouTube join function. Mail me a check, whatever. Please Come back and see us again. And don't forget, we'll see all of you on the other side.